And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to the West Contra Costa Unified School District Independent Redistrict Commission for November 9th, and it is 6:30 p.m. and I am calling the meeting to order. Our next item on the agenda, item 2, is roll call to make sure we have a quorum present.
Commissioner Butler,
Present.
Commissioner Diaz-Noriega, Commissioner Tualu, Commissioner Hilliard.
Present.
He's here. He's online.
I believe he may be muted right
He's
now.
on.
Oh,
Did you hear me say present?
no, we didn't. Now we do.
Okay, present.
Perfect.
Commission Chair Gordon,
Present.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Present.
We do have a quorum. If anyone else joins in, we will note the time. But we do have a quorum, so we will be moving on with our agenda. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Are there any questions or changes from commissioners or Mr. Pitts? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda from October 26th. I mean, November 9th.
And I just want the record to show that Commissioner Tualu has just joined us. We have a motion on the floor for the approval of the agenda. I need a second. Is there a second?
I second.
I have a second from Commissioner Lazzaretti. We have a roll call. Rochelle.
Commissioner Butler,
Yay.
Commissioner Diaz-Noriega, Commissioner Tualu,
Present.
Commissioner Hilliard,
Yes.
Commission Chair Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes. And can I ask a clarifying question? Commissioner Tualu, did you want to vote present on approving the agenda or vote affirmatively to approve the agenda?
Oh, sorry, I just joined. I thought it's a roll call for attendance. Yeah, I don't have any, I vote yes for the agenda.
So
Thank you for
so-
coming. Welcome. I do. Jeff, you gave us the great San Francisco Day tickets. Yes, I remember.
So Commissioner Tualu, should we include you as an affirmative vote for approval of the agenda?
Yeah, the agenda, yeah, I approve the agenda. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yes. And let the record show that we do have 2 in attendance this evening, so we will be getting public input. And thank you for showing up. Our next item on the agenda was item 4. It is the approval of the October 26 minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes from commissioners? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Have a motion from Commissioner Lazzaretti
I second.
and a second from Commissioner Butler. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz-Noriega, Commissioner Tualu,
Yes.
Commissioner Hilliard,
Yes, I approve.
Commission Chair Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes.
And I also want to let the minutes reflect that we do have Dr. Collingwood in attendance this evening. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Collingwood. Moving on to our next item is item 5, public comment not for items not on the agenda. And this is the time that we allow for public comment, 3 minutes. But we do ask that it be under our jurisdiction and something that is not already on our agenda. Is there public comment receiving from either participants on the Zoom meeting or from the public here today? Are there any? We have one person with a hand up, attendee.
Scott Rafferty,
Mr. Rafferty, you have 3 minutes.
please unmute. Try that one more time.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to compliment you on your first hearing. You seem to be doing everything right. I appreciate that you have interpretation and that you are allowing people to record the meeting, which is, I think, very useful. I just got off a meeting which is entirely in Spanish, and I'm afraid my language skills weren't up to it. And I want to reassure you that Mr. Luizito and I will do anything necessary if there are any complications from the delay in the time frame. We'll be there to support you. I think that you've done everything you can to get someone from District 2, and I have confidence that you can will be very effective in representing that body until and unless a qualified appointee appears. I mean, your job is really to be scribes for the public that provides input, and I know you can do that, and I look forward to the results. I just hope you keep encouraged about the process. You'll get more attention, I'm sure, as things move on. And I wish you well, and we're here to support in any way that we can. So good luck and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rafferty. Is there any other public comment this evening?
No more public comment.
All right, moving on to item 6, our discussion and possible action items. There will be 3 minutes allowed under each item, except for, of course, our public outreach and solicitation of public input regarding the preliminary plan options. So, which is item D. So let's move on to item A first. Discussion and possible adoption of a resolution regarding the continuing to meet via video conferencing and teleconferencing. If you're online, you can access our resolution. If you're here, we have some resolutions available. If you would like to read those. You're good? Okay. So we have several whereases, and if Mr. Pitts, you would like to highlight the whereases and give us an idea of what the resolution will do for us.
Certainly. So the resolution, which was made available to the commission in advance and also displayed on the commission's website so that the public could have access to it in advance, is resolution number 2021-01 by the Independent Redistricting Commission. The purpose of this resolution would be to allow the commission to continue using teleconference meetings for the time being in lieu of the in-person meetings generally required by the Brown Act or the default teleconferencing options of the Brown Act, which are quite onerous, and it would allow the commission to continue meeting as it has via Zoom. The legislature amended the Brown Act this year to enable such Zoom type meetings to continue under certain circumstances, those circumstances primarily being that there is a state of emergency in effect, and that either the state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing, or the commission believes that meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health and safety of attendees. So this resolution proposes making the findings to justify continuing to meet via Zoom. Specifically in the whereas provision notes that the governor did declare a state of emergency arising from the COVID-19 pandemic on March 4th, 2020, and that state of emergency remains in effect. That the Contra Costa County Health Officer on September 20th, 2001, issued recommendations for safely holding public meetings that include recommended measures to promote social distancing, and included recommending that all meetings take place online if possible. It said it was strongly recommended online meetings for the sake of the public health. And so the whereas provisions of this note that essentially the conditions for continuing to meet via Zoom video conference are satisfied here. And then the recitals and findings make the necessary findings and instruct that the commission will continue to meet via Zoom methods going forward for the next 30 days. One of the conditions of the new law is that this authorization be renewed every 30 days based on a reconsideration of the relevant factors.
Thank you. Really well done. I don't think I have to add any therefore. A yes vote then will support the resolution as is. And are there questions or comments from commissioners? Is there public comment on this item?
No public comment at this time.
So I'll bring it back for a motion. Is there a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
Yes, I move that we approve the resolution as presented by Mr. Pitts.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hilliard. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Commissioner Lazzaretti. Roll call.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz-Noriega, absent. Commissioner Tolu,
yes,
Commissioner Hilliard,
Yes,
Commission Chair Gordon,
Yes.
Commissioner Lazzaretti.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to item B, the presentation from Dr. Collingwood and his research regarding, excuse me, preliminary plan. Dr. Collingwood. Can we make him a panelist? There it is.
Great, thanks everybody for having me. I got this mustache going here, so please forgive the 1970s throwback look. My colleague and research associate Sean Long is on the line, and I have a presentation that I've planned for you. It includes two maps for now, and then some of the process of what we're doing. And the maps are largely geared around the initial existing map that we use, kind of a starting point. We're not at all tied to these maps. And so the process here that we want to do is basically get feedback from everybody here, and then with a goal of producing 4 or 5 updated maps by Friday that I'll post to my website, and a bunch of information for people, for the public to be able to interactively engage these maps, look at the PDFs and those kinds of things. So without further ado, I have about 7 or 8 minute presentation, if that's okay. So I'm going to share my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can I go ahead and do that?
Add one more time.
Excellent. Okay. All right, so again, my name is Lauren Collingwood, PhD, CEO of Collingwood Research, also an associate professor of political science at University of New Mexico. And my colleague, Sean Long, who's a research associate at Collingwood Research, also is involved in the data collection process. Today, the presentation overview, just as a roadmap, a quick overview on districting principles, things that I consider, obviously the lawyers in the room are very familiar with this process. A note on VRA Voting Rights Act compliance, which is my understanding is why we're here. Then a plan ahead as to how this process is going to look today. And then I want to overview my general data process, why this process does take some time and is very involved. And then presentation of 2 maps where 3 of the districts are basically the same, and then focusing in on kind of the central Richmond and south of their area. I think districts 3 and 2. So in general, good districting principles, the number 1 requirement is basically population equality. This gets down to 1 person, 1 vote idea. In this, the West Contra Costa County School District, based on adjusted population, there's 260,791 individuals and 5 trustee seats. Therefore, the ideal population should be 52,158 people per seat. It's important to know that this is adjusted data. So this accounts for, say, people who are prisoners elsewhere, but their last address was in the school trustee or in the WCCUSD area. The goal, of course, is to keep seat deviation as low as possible, under 1%, but lower courts and upper courts, generally 5% is considered acceptable. And in certain cases, it could be 10%. I've worked in some areas in the Dakotas where people are looking at 10% deviation. But here, for sure, we should be able to keep it quite easily under 5% and certainly below that in most districts. Second, VRA compliance, and this is particularly where we're going to focus on the Hispanic or Latino population here, where the idea is if it's feasible to draw a realistic map that's 50% plus 1 citizen voting age population, then to comply with the Voting Rights Act, that's what should be done. Additional thoughts in terms of good districting principles are compactness. Here we do run into some compactness challenges in a smaller district like this, or a smaller area like this in terms of population size, but that usually tends to fall secondary to the VRA compliance component. So when you think of compactness, the most compact situation would be a circle, of course. And so we've all seen extreme gerrymandered districts in North Carolina, other places. So in general, we will try to avoid that as we proceed forward, but you'll see, as you're familiar with the maps already, that there is some tails here and there. And then, of course, contiguity is extremely important, is basically required. You can't effectively have an island sitting, say, a District 5 fully encapsulated by a District 3, for example. That's not possible. And then we want to keep in mind natural human-made boundaries, such as lakes, mountains, highways, and things like that. But if we're searching for a VRA compliant seat, sometimes we can put that as a higher kind of level of importance over these other principles. And then we try to respect cities, county lines, other government lines to the extent that we can. So these are the things that going forward we want to think about in terms of crafting adequate and good districts. In terms of the Voting Rights Act VRA compliance, this is what I spend a lot of my time doing these days. And here it really comes down to the Thornberg versus Jingles test, at least at the federal Voting Rights Act level, where we want to examine, hey, is the minority group large enough to make up a majority of voters in at least 1 seat? And in this case, we're focused particularly on the Hispanic or Latino population because that population has grown in this area and many other places. And the question is whether we can draw that seat in particular, but not to discount other groups as equally important voters, but it's going to be the challenge here in this case is to focus on that population in particular, but while respecting other natural boundaries. And then are minority voters politically cohesive? So this is a little bit less the charge of a demographer. This tends to be more of when I put on my political scientist hat, and that analysis will be forthcoming. And generally what we'll do there, we'll examine elections where there's candidates of different racial or ethnic groups. And then we want to see whether voters of those same ethnic groups tend to prefer those candidates, co-ethnic candidates. It doesn't have to be specifically pairing the voter with the race or ethnicity of the candidate, but in general, we tend to examine those elections because they're more probative. And I'll probably have another presentation on that at some point. And then finally, under the old election scheme, i.e. at large, are majority voters voting cohesively and tending to block minorities from electing candidates of choice, right? So these are things that we're thinking about moving forward. So the general plan ahead is to solicit feedback here today and offline to the extent that that is beneficial to all, and then update 2 or 3 additional quote initial maps. And so the idea here will be to craft 4 to 5 initial maps, and then over time we'll get closer to the kind of the agreed upon map. And so the plan for now is to post maps to Collingwood Research, my website, and then I'll have a WCCC section of that website. And so for each proposed map, the idea will be to have a PDF of each trustee seat. This is what is spit out in the Maptitude redistricting software that I use. And it's also important, we'll have population demographics. And so I'll examine that today a little bit. And so people can look at that. And then shape files of the map. A shape file is pretty much the GIS, Geographic Information Systems software that other demographers or other people who are used to dealing with maps and making maps through ArcGIS, for example, can come in and they can look at the map and do things with it and provide, suggestions. And then this is one thing that my colleague and I have spent quite a bit of time over the past week or two, producing interactive HTML files. And so this is basically an HTML file that's available that you all and others can basically zoom in and zoom out of certain areas, right? If you want to know how is this area around Rollingwood looking, and I provide citizen voting age population shading by, say, for example, % Hispanic, % Black, % AAPI or Asian, and % white, Anglo-white. And so for each plan, there will be 4 separate interactive maps that people can zoom in on. And that quickly can tell you where the populations demographically reside. And then there will be a presentation today, will be the meat and potatoes, as it were, of the presentation today of these two maps. So a brief overview of the data process here. I did go over this a bit last time, but I just wanted to have it down so people can think about it. And of course, I'm happy to share these slides with anybody. I can send those over just right afterwards if the commissioners are interested in looking at this in more detail, potentially asking some questions. So we downloaded the adjusted 2020 census data from the California statewide database for Contra Costa County, and then subset that the blocks, the 2020 drawn blocks, we subset that to the district that we're looking at, right? The Contra Costa County, West Contra Costa County School District. Then we effectively did the same process using 2020 blocks to get the 2015 to 2019 American Community Survey demographic data. So the citizen question, you may remember this from a year or two ago, the citizenship question is not asked on the full census, it's only asked on the American Community Survey. And so that's why we use this ACS data as opposed to the census in terms of looking at citizen voting age population as the stipulation for drawing the 50% plus 1 seats. Then we gathered a boundary shapefile of the district. And so the kind of unique, the unique look of this district, as you all are very familiar, we gathered the trustee shapefile, the current one that we use to kind of begin our initial points because it already has population equality fairly well situated. The challenge, of course, is we put the new census data numbers into the districts, and numbers are going to shift around a little bit, right? People might have moved from one part of the area to another part of the area or out of the district completely. And so that's the apportionment or reapportionment process of all of this. We also have the precinct shapefile and election returns, although we haven't looked at that in depth yet. That will be more for when we do the racially polarized voting analysis. And then kind of the bells and whistles bit that I had been very interested in bringing in, just from a kind of it's not so much a liability perspective, but more a kind of a performance perspective, is we gathered the 2020 Contra Costa County voter file from the state of California. We subset that again to the specific area under examination. We then conducted what's called Bayesian Improved Surname Geocoding, BISG, to estimate individual voters' race, to spit out 5 different race probabilities, and then aggregated those probabilities to the block to get an estimate as to the share of total voters of different racial groups, registered voters of different racial groups. I should note here that particularly for Hispanics and Asian populations, the BISG is very, very accurate, in part because of distinct surnames. If you think of someone named Hernandez or Garcia, the probability that they're Hispanic is probably 92 to 94%. And we know that because of census files that keep people's surnames from the US Census. And then we can tally people, for example, named Collingwood, and what the share of Collingwoods in the United States that are white, for example, is also very high. For Blacks and Anglo whites, the BISG process is sometimes a little bit less accurate at times. And so I can talk about that a little bit more when we look at the data. So again, I should note we started with the current map, and then the maps are produced initially in Maptitude redistricting software, and then we use the statistical software R to produce these interactive plots in a package called Leaflet. So this is produced from leaflets. So for example, this is the initial map 1. You can see this looks very familiar. If I'm kind of clicking around here, there was a little bit of a distinction here from what I've seen before. This does produce a pretty population equal set of districts. And then also each district has, except for District 4, there is one racial or ethnic population that tends to be a little bit higher than others, right? And so y'all are very familiar with this map. And so we're going to produce these numbers here in District 1. So now this is what happens is the PDF software will produce, or the Maptitude will produce these different districts one by one. And what I have done here is for District 1, this is the kind of El Cerrito part of the district, and then drops down to grab these areas here. Its total population now in this district is 53,578. And I'm just looking over here. The ideal population should be 52,158. So there's a deviation of 2.72%. So it's a little bit bigger than what the target would be. And so we could potentially move some people at the edges. You see here, these are census place lines, for example. So the full area of Kensington is captured within this district, full area of El Cerrito, and then these areas are a bit more split up here if memory serves. But we can in future presentations also, I can use a different computer, because my normal computer is a Mac, and then Maptitude is on a Windows. So I'm not quite as comfortable on the Windows, so I wanted to stay on the Mac for today. The key here thing to note, I've also circled that this is a 55% white citizen voting age population district. If you zoom down here to total registration, excuse these kind of numbers here, but we see here that the registration percentages as estimated through my BSG algorithm is about 57-58% of the district. And then if you look at white turnout, it's also a little bit higher. Okay, so these are pretty consistent numbers. District 2 here, this is the area that is disproportionately Black. If you see the Black Latino, the Black citizen voting age population is 41%. I think that's about the same or a little bit higher than it was last time. And the deviation here is not too bad. It's at 2.34%. So the total population is 52,377 relative to the ideal population of 52,158. So it's pretty good. The one thing here to examine is the Hispanic population is larger than the Black population in this district, quite a bit. But because what's likely the case is that the Hispanic population is either higher in non-citizen and or it's a younger population overall. So, and we know that everywhere that I work, where there is a Latino and API population, you're going to see somewhat of an imbalance between the population and the citizen voting age population. We also have some other characteristics here with the estimated turnout numbers as well, and I can go into that a little bit more. But you see kind of what's available to us as we proceed. District 3 here, again, if these numbers are a little bit harder to see, just kind of kind of setting this up again. This is a slightly smaller district, right? So this that you see this negative deviation of 3.78% means that it's a little bit lower than the target of 52,000. There's definitely ways you'll see here in the next map that I think this is a highway right here. I'm going to drop down and grab a population right here that is a higher density Hispanic population and put that in, and then change this up a little bit. And you'll see that this number here of 51.57% Hispanic citizen voting age population will go up to about 55, 56%. So that's, that might be of interest. You can also see again here with the pretty strong accuracy of the race prediction at the individual level and then aggregated to the block. The Hispanic registration in this district is 63.85%. Okay, note that does come with a little bit of error, but that is if we're trying to comply, particularly in this seat, with the Voting Rights Act. Commissioners may also be interested, you all might be interested to say, well, hey, will this district perform? Will Latinos not only be able to, can the seat perform, but can they also realistically elect a candidate of choice? And with these registration numbers and also these voting numbers, at least for 2020, it looks pretty good. Then District 4, this effectively remains unchanged from what we've seen before. The way that I tend to work in these spaces, if a district is already kind of performing the way that we might. Oh, actually, no, sorry. I have not changed this district, but this is the one, sorry, that I was thinking of District 1, but this is the district here, of course, that is a very, what we call plural district, very even distribution of the different racial and ethnic populations in this district. There's definitely a lot to work with here. Although the population deviation here of 1.61% is, it's a little bit under, but it's still pretty good. Okay, so this is what might be called the plural district of the five seats. And then finally, in this case, District 5, again, you've seen this one, almost perfect deviation here. I mean, this isn't Montana. I was in Montana recently, not there, but working in Montana, and the districts that I saw proposed were different by one out of 1 million some odd people. They're different, but they're 2 districts and they're different by 1 person. But they don't have the kind of the different demographic and VRA challenges that the Bay Area and many parts of California have. So I thought that was pretty amazing. I couldn't believe it. But here, District 5 is going to be the share of the Asian population and the Asian citizen voting age population. Interestingly enough, according to these estimates, are exactly the same. The Asian registration is 34% as well. So the Asian population here is the largest share of this district. Okay, so again, we're focusing here on racial characteristics of the different areas so that we can make sure that we comply with Voting Rights Act requirements and electability issues. All right, so then I probably won't go through all of these, but this is what's available. So if you say, for example, we want to look at the Hispanic CBAP area here, this is basically what you all will be able to do. You can see here up to the top right is the key. And so for each of these proposed plans, there will be this that you can go on You can see they're all shaded in the same 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100. So it's consistent for each different citizen voting age population for the 4 major racial populations in West Contra Costa County School District. And so what you can do is you can zoom in here, right? You can click there and you can readjust and you can see. And then as you get closer, you can say, okay, well, let's look at this area here. Sometimes the kind of highlighting, there's some issues with that for some weird reason, but let's click on this one. This is census block. Here's the basically the configuration of the census block, the specific ID. You can see, well, this is not, nobody basically lives in that one. So let's pick one that makes more sense. Here, the voting age population is 75 and the voting age Latinos is 75, right? So this census block right here is 100% Hispanic, basically, at least in terms of citizen voting age population. And so you can kind of play around with it. You see the kind of black district here, boundary. This is the boundary lines. And this way, sometimes you can go and you can begin to understand why, say, this one cut. Yes. Am I going too long?
No, we just are not having any visual at this time. We cannot.
Oh, I am so sorry. It's because I'm only sharing my PowerPoint. So that is such a rookie move. Give me a second here. I'm going to stop share and I'm just going to share my full screen. I didn't just, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Hopefully nothing pops through on my text message here. Okay, so this is what I was showing. Okay, so y'all can see that? Give me a thumbs up. Yep, okay.
Yeah.
So here you can zoom in and for each block, you can see, in this case, the percent, the citizen voting age population, the voting age Latino population, and then the percent. And then we'll switch it up and we'll look at, say, the Black citizen voting age population or the white citizen voting age population. And so it also provides you with the census block information. That's this number at the top there, right? And that's a unique identifier. And this data can all this data can be available to you with the different files that if you yourself are a demographer or know someone or play one on TV, right? You can get that information. And this also has the boundary lines here. And so you can zoom in. And so say, for example, I just happen to know, I think Deanne's high school, because I remember their football team was always, I think it was their football team was always beating on everybody when I was a kid. If my memory is correct over there, but you can kind of, I was trying to remember where it was. You could zoom on these areas, and you could say, okay, well, I don't know, this district line right here, does this make sense? Or did he just cut through a golf course or what, right? And so these are areas that, you could say, okay, this area over here, let's try to work this in, into a different district potentially. So I think this is a great resource, and people in the different districts or the different parts of the area can kind of look at that at their own leisure. So just really briefly, say, for example, I want to look at the, let's say the Black CVAP population, can click on there. And once again, you can see here, right here, the concentration is focused around this area right here, as you all likely know. And if you're interested perhaps in growing a district that has a larger Black population, you could potentially maybe grab some of this area up here as well, and draw a line that cuts up and goes around there or something like that. That could be potentially possible if people find that to be of interest for them, right? So this is the kind of things that are going to be available. These are the kinds of maps that I've been working on to provide you all in the community. And then I'm just going to kind of zoom through a little bit faster on map 2. What's good is the kind of framework is really here, and so it's the populations work pretty well together, which can often be a real challenge with this kind of work. But here, what I wanted to highlight really quickly is the areas in these circles here. So this has been added now to District 3, and then this has been added instead to District 2. All right, and so this area here is a fairly high density Latino area. And as you can see here, there's obviously a highway. You tend to not want to do that, but in this case, if we're interested in increasing the Hispanic population, citizen voting age population in District 3, then that might be something that the commissioners want to think about. So again, this population district is basically the same. Here's District 2. And what we see here is a deviation of negative 1.5%. That's not too bad. And then a pretty reasonable Black citizen voting age population. This is what we would in the business call an ability to elect Black district in that respect, based on citizen voting age population data. And then here's District 3, where now the deviations dropped even lower. So in that respect, it's an improved district. We have dropped some of this space right here. So this is a bit narrow right here into Rollingwood from San Pablo. But what we see here is the Hispanic citizen voting age population jumping up to nearly 56%. Okay, so that is from, we're basically grabbing this area here and putting it into District 3. And then these two districts are still the same. So again, you could do the same thing where you click on and look at the different maps that are now slightly different and go hunting around, as it were, from block to block, looking at different areas and that kind of thing. So I'm gonna save people's time from not doing that. And so that's the end of my presentation. And I'm happy to take questions or seed ground, because I definitely have talked too much. So thank you very much.
You didn't talk too much at all. I'm just sorry we didn't stop you sooner so we could have the visual map subs up with it. Is there questions or comments from commissioners?
I'll start, Dr. Collingwood. So we're in District 5 tonight here in Pinole Valley High School. And is there anything, it seems like that's a map you're not proposing many changes to. That seems like the population trends are pretty stable here, but is there anything in particular? I wonder if it might be good to zoom in a little bit on this particular district and see if there's anything in particular with what you're seeing in the demographics and population trends that we might want to keep in mind in terms of this this particular map for this area.
Yeah, so what I haven't done as much yet with District 5, this is a very interesting district. It would be what I would call an Asian ability to elect district. But the challenge with the AAPI population, as many people know, is really kind of dialing in on the different countries of origin and whether those different groups are in fact voting together. So when I do racially polarized voting analysis, usually the AAPI population is the least cohesive of the different racial populations. And it's obvious, right? It's like someone's from, background from India, someone's background is from Pakistan, someone's background is from China. And so why should they be voting cohesively? And that's to some extent the case for the Hispanic population as well. And that's a whole different conversation, but that's going to be the thing there that I think I would like a little bit more information on. We'll be diving into that more as we proceed. And because what could happen, right? It could be the AAPI numbers look larger on aggregate, but when you disaggregate that data, the reality is that, and I think we'll know more with this when we get to the racially polarized voting part of this, if we can pull that apart, if there's enough high density precincts and census blocks of people from specific countries of origin, then we'll be able to kind of show that a little bit more. So that's the key part of the RPV analysis. But for now, no, I haven't focused as much on that part of the district yet. It's more been focusing on districts 2 and 3 and kind of dealing with those at the edges. That's how I tend to do things. I kind of try to get to the core part of where the kind of demographic tension is, as it were, not necessarily political tension, but demographic tension, get that sorted, and then we move to the kind of the other areas. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one.
Any other questions, comments from commissioners this evening? Commissioner Hilliard.
Yes, first, I just want to thank Dr. Collingwood for putting together these two maps. I think it's a great start. And I think map 2 is also a really good start, just to adjust things a bit and to try to make sure that the characteristics in each trustee area comply with the Voting Rights Act in terms of minority electability and giving voting power to underrepresented communities. And one point I wanted to raise with Dr. Collingwood is I think you inadvertently switched District 1 and District 5 because you're currently in District 1 at Pinole Valley High. And currently,
Okay.
unless you're privy to information that we don't have,
No.
Area
Yeah.
5, Area 5 is usually the El Cerrito, South Richmond, Richmond Annex area.
Yeah, that's a good point. The software that I use somewhat arbitrarily assigns numbers, and so I'll go and I'll talk to Casey and others to make sure that the numbering is consistent so that there's no confusion there. So I'll make sure that happens. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions from commissioners this evening?
Just a quick follow-up. We're talking specifically in this district about Pinole and Hercules, and I assume the demographic data shows that most of the Asian population is in Hercules, and I think it's largely a Filipino population. That's look right to you, Doctor?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, I mean, if I mean, I could hold on. Let me just quickly look at my interactive plot here. And if you're curious, I do like looking at maps. I've always looked at maps ever since I was a little kid. So it's really cool that I get to do this. But yeah, you're right. The northeastern part of the district, and Hercules in particular, appears to have the highest AAPI density. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, I reached out to the city councils in Pinole and Hercules just to let the commission know. And I know the Hercules City Council was meeting tonight, so none of their members are going to be able to join. Maybe Pinole is as well. But I did get this comment I just wanted to share from council member or Mayor Chris Kelly of Hercules. He just shared with me, I think it's best to keep all of Hercules and Pinole in one district, which is now Area 1. Our two cities are diverse and we have a lot in common. So I just wanted to share that with the commission. What it's worth.
That's a great segue. Is there any other commissioner comments at this time? Not, we can open it up to the public for public comments. Jeff, do you
I had
have
one
any-
other question for Dr. Collingwood. And looking at the respective maps for the different areas, looked like there was like a standard deviation for some of them of ranging from -1 to -3. And I just wanted to ask whether a standard deviation like that is statistically significant, or is it just something that happens with the course of trying to make the best map possible? Because the ideal number is what, 52,158 per seat. But if we fall short by 1%, 2%, that would not affect compliance with the Voting Rights Act.
No, that's totally fine. I see numbers up to 5% sometimes. It's just we try to get them low, right? So that it's just one less thing that someone can comment upon. But it's in terms of a statistically significant a part of deviation, this a little bit different than what we normally would use in a statistical analysis in terms of standard deviation. So really it's population deviation is the term that we're going to use here. And those numbers, I'm pretty confident these numbers are quite strong. And just moving forward, we can, if we want, we can move some blocks around to adjust populations. That's a fairly easy thing to do, to drop that down a little bit if we need to. And those can be some of the kind of latter stage discussions that we have, but no, we're in good shape when it comes to deviation.
Totally. Thank you.
This time I can open it up for public comment on Zoom. Is there public comment on Zoom for this item?
Yes.
I see Mr.
Mr.
Rafferty.
Rafferty. Please unmute.
Well, this is really exciting. Of course, the first thing when the census data came out, I immediately looked at our districts in West Contra Costa, and I was surprised actually at how much things had changed. Both in we had a very hard time getting to 50% +1, and in our negotiations, and now it's clearly 53, and that shift is also quite interesting. There's been a displacement of the Black community in Iron Triangle. So I had exactly the same thought about moving that district in that direction. On the subject of Section 2, it's actually there's haven't been a lot of Section 2 cases in California because of the CVRA. The last one, like 25 years ago, if you read it closely, you realize that they got away with some majority districts which were less than 50%. That's just a midpoint estimate. But you're going to want to have a strong Latino district, preferably somewhat more than 50%, because registration is and participation is a persistent problem in that community. The reverse is true in the African-American community, which I believe in Richmond and many other places actually votes at higher levels than whites in the same neighborhood. So you still want to have the best Black district you can, which will be shy of 50%, and it will be in roughly the same place. In terms of things you should not look at, you must not look at where the incumbents live. And the incumbents, by the way, probably like the status quo, because the 4 of them that ran all displaced incumbents with this map. But you should really take a clean slate. A statute doesn't allow you to consider that. And don't look at buildings. We were told we should have the Chevron headquarters in somebody's district. Buildings don't vote. Schools don't vote. School buildings. You look at the community of interest, which is sometimes the attendance zone or the de facto attendance zone, which is how we got to the white district, which is going to El Cerrito High. Compactness, it helps to like just line out the open space, which is a big part of this district, and your districts will look a lot more compact, get a clearer vision of that. I don't actually think following city boundaries is a great idea, especially Richmond, because they're very regular, but also because this isn't just a stepping stone to city council. The school has different communities of interest. And if you look at it from a voter perspective, you really should have different boundaries. But I would look at the minority districts of Richmond and West County wastewater. It'd be nice to have some similarities there, so maybe people could run as a slate. Lots more to say, but that's all I can make for 3 minutes. So it's really exciting to see Lauren work on this, and you'll do well. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rafferty. Other public comment on this item?
No more public comment. Sorry about that.
That's fine. I've got it up here, so I'm kind of, for once, I can kind of see it in front of me. Well, then we'll move into item C, but I believe we've been covering item C, which is a discussion regarding presentation of the commissioner's work to the community. But we can continue that. We have a presentation on that, or any updates, or
Well, I think that this was requested by Commissioner Lazzaretti at the last meeting. So I think obviously we started the process today of presenting Dr. Collingwood's research, and then we'll have a little bit more to say, although you actually covered almost everything we need to say already before agenda item D. So I think the question is on the agenda now, are there other things that we should be doing, or do we want, to come up with a plan for debriefing based on tonight's events about, the next steps in terms of presenting the material?
Fantastic. What is the pleasure of the commission? Greg?
Well, I think it's great to be out here in West County and Pinole in particular, my alma mater. 1989, I graduated from here. So jealous of this beautiful campus.
It's gorgeous.
You guys, much different from what I remember. But I think that I tried to reach, from my standpoint, I reached out to the city council members in Pinole and Hercules to let them know about this meeting. And I think we should try to do the same with our future meetings, and also to let folks know if they can make one meeting, just because it's not in their trustee area, they're welcome to come to another meeting, in a different part of the district. That these meetings, as we're seeing from Dr. Collingwood's presentation, aren't specific to the trustee area we're sitting in tonight, although I tried to use this opportunity to focus in a little bit on area one in this community. But I don't really have much else other than that. I don't know if any other folks have any ideas. I would just say, like, there's also the question of the unincorporated communities, which are part of this, that don't lie within the city council or city limits, particular cities. El Sobrante comes to mind, which is near, right close by here. And if there's any kind of community outreach we can do in those communities beyond the supervisor's office, to let folks know about our work here and to get their thoughts. So that's what, off the top of my head, that's what comes to mind.
I did reach out to the NAACP and to the Latinx group, and they did get it word out to the affinity groups. And so we can keep trying, and people are busy. We understand that for sure. But we would appreciate any and all input. And like Commissioner Lazzaretti stated, you do not have to show up to the area that you want to talk about. You can show up to any of the areas and discuss the maps in their entirety until you get everything that you need to say to said and done. So, Commissioner Butler, do you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion?
Not to this particular discussion. I think in addition to the groups that were mentioned, my efforts were with existing entities at the school. So school site council, PTA, I think those things are generally the best way to reach parents. And like you mentioned, people are busy. I think we're still emerging from the pandemic. And so I think attendance across those type of meetings continues to wane or, be stagnant. But I think we just have to continue to do that and try to, again, not recreate the wheel in terms of the outreach effort. And so we're learning from this first meeting and trying to figure out in the next meetings that we have upcoming, what are those avenues and those particular trustee areas that we can leverage and try to get, as much community input as possible.
And I will state that looking at the supervisors who have all of Contra Costa, even when they go out, even into the specific areas, they have close over 200,000. They're averaging between 50 and 20 participants. So it's I think the pandemic has really kind of dampened this, although we do have the teleconferencing, the webinars, the Zoom platform that we've been using, and I think it's been very successful. So I'm really happy that we passed the resolution and we can continue to use this hybrid. This is really exciting for me to have some here in person and some through Zoom. So I think we are doing our best at this time. Commissioner Hilliard, do you have any other comments you'd like to contribute this evening on this item?
Well, first I'd like to thank the people who showed up to Pinole Valley High School to attend this meeting, commissioners and members of the public. It's great to see people engaged in this process and lending their voice. And I wanted to commend Commissioner Lazzaretti for his outreach efforts to get the word out about this meeting, as well as to Commissioner Butler. I plan to pick up where they've already done so much heavy lifting to get the word out about next week's meeting at El Cerrito High, by reaching out to City Council, to the respective PTAs for each of the schools in the area, the Kensington City Council, and just putting it on Facebook, putting it on Instagram, spreading the word. And as Commissioner Gordon aptly stated, there's a lot going on right now where people may not have the time and the attention, or they may not think they do, to be able to attend a meeting. And we're going to try to get the word out and let people know that it's a really informative and educational process. And because this does affect big decisions down the line for the children in our community, do what they can. If you can't attend in person, attend online. And I think we'll get better moving forward with getting the word out and trying to get more of the public here with us. Thank you.
Commissioner Toulouse?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Collingwood, for the presentation, and also for the public who attend in person and also through Zoom. Yeah, it's interesting to see that some of the area, the population get little change, but I believe we have a goal to accomplish. If there is possibility of minority get a representation, then we will draw the map based on that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, would you like to stand up and introduce yourself?
Sure, thank
This is
you.
your first for our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Nazzaretti, for the invitation to participate. I'm Norma Martinez Rubin, and I happen to have spotted your email. So I am serving as the mayor of City of Pinole. I appreciate the demographic information about that. One request I would make in the outreach that you do, and this is for all the commissioners, is as much as Dr. Collingwood loves maps and demography and population data, and many of us do, it's the relevance of that information on a day-to-day basis that makes a difference to having people understand why it's relevant and why it's important to participate. So having heard the challenge of the busyness of people's lives and the challenge to have the public come in and provide comment or participate, we experienced that too, city council meetings, and we share that difficulty, and it's unfortunate to also hear in public comments that oftentimes in our roles we simply don't care as to what is going on in our districts. So untrue. However, to try to have an understanding that what work you do as commissioners or as elected, etc., has a bearing on people's daily lives, that's the message that we need to do a lot better with. And so my plea to you all is to translate what is going on technically with understanding these maps and redistricting to how it applies down the line in the lives of parents and school children. Thank you.
Do you want to introduce yourself and comment?
I am Jeff Rubin. I'm the president of the Pinole Historical Society, and I am the mayor's husband.
Thank you. Any other public comment at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to item D and continue our our conversation about public outreach, solicitation of public input regarding preliminary plan of options and any other information that should be considered in developing the preliminary plan.
Yeah, well, this is me. Again, my name is Commissioner Omar Butler, resident of Pinole, trustee area 1. I saw that 5 and I was like, am I missing something? So thank you, Commissioner Hillier, for bringing that out. But I have 2 small children who attend school here in trustee area 1. So this is extremely important and valuable to me as a parent and to me as a resident. But I feel like we probably should have led with this to really name what our charge is here at the Redistricting Commission. But we're really charged with developing a map that will identify the 5 trustee areas for West Contra Costa Unified School District elections from 2022 through 2030. We've all signed up and applied to be in this role. So I think just giving ourselves a round of applause just for the work that we've been doing and the engagement that we've had over the past 7 months, I think it is. But we were selected by U.S. District Court Judge Sheldon Henderson. And so just want to highlight what we've done and been able to accomplish thus far. We retained legal counsel and a professional demographer who we heard from tonight, who will advise the commission on the process of developing new trustee area maps. We've also developed a plan for outreach. And as we talked about, it's really an ongoing iterative process to understand how to best reach the community, because our goal from the start has been to be a very inclusive process that takes account of the various voices and make sure that we remove as many barriers to accessibility of hearing this information and understanding it. So thank you for the comment around the importance of translating what we all kind of have access to and have some technical wherewithal to kind of understand and make sure that it is something that our community can understand and digest and be able to form opinions around. And so tonight is the first of 5 public outreach meetings that will take place before we adopt a preliminary plan. The commission will hold 1 meeting in each trustee area. This was the first meeting. We'll meet next November 16th at El Cerrito High. We'll meet November 23rd at Richmond High, November 30th at De Anza High School or Contra Costa College. We're still trying to figure out the best place in terms of accessibility. And then December 7th at Kennedy High School. Following those 5 meetings, or the 5 meetings, we'll adopt a preliminary plan by December 14th. We'll hold 3 additional public meetings prior to the adoption of the final plan, which is due February 15th of 2022. And so we're excited to continue to work. We're excited to continue to learn, and we want to make sure that this process, again, is inclusive and it is representative of the diverse beauty of the cities that are within West Contra Costa Unified School District.
Thank you, Commissioner Butler. And I just wanted to, before we open it to further public input, although we've already received some very valuable public input in connection with the other agenda items, I just wanted to provide a little legal background, although our demographer has already provided a lot of this, so I won't go over all the same ground in detail. But as many people here know, but some may be unaware, this commission was created to settle a lawsuit called Ruiz-Lozito versus West Contra Costa Unified School District, which challenged the use of at-large elections for the trustees for the West Contra Costa Unified School District under the Federal Voting Rights Act and the California Voting Rights Act. And the claim in that case being that racially polarized voting in those at-large elections diluted the voting strength of Black and Latino citizens and impaired their ability to participate in the political process, to elect candidates of their choice, and to influence the outcome of elections, resulting in the abridgment of the right to vote. And so as part of the resolution of that settlement, the district agreed with the plaintiffs in that case to transition to from an at-large system to a district-based system. And they adopted a temporary map for use in the 2020 elections with the knowledge that after the census was coming up and there would be a need for the development of new map after that census data was collected and made available. And as part of the process, there was also an agreement that rather than leaving the development of the new map with with the trustees themselves, that there would be an independent commission created to create that map. And so that is the way that the commission that we're here today came to be. And that's important because as it has been referenced, it does go to the principles that govern the work of the commission. As Dr. Collingwood stated, the first principle has to be a reasonably equal population for each trustee area. That's the core one person, one vote principle that the Supreme Court recognized long ago. But second is the second consideration set forth in the settlement agreement, and that reflects that this emerged from the CVRA and Federal Voting Rights Act litigation, was considering the protected classes that exist within the voting populations and the resident populations of the school district, and whether areas can be created to enable members of those protected classes, particularly Latino or Black voters, to elect candidates of choice and influence elections on a basis that's equal to the opportunity that has been enjoyed by the rest of the electorate, particularly for many years that the district was using at-large systems. So we're sort of in a remedial context here, trying to think about what systems we need going forward in light of the prior CVRA and Federal Voting Rights Act issues that emerged. And then, as our expert demographer noted, there are a number of other factors that then have to be considered on top of that as the commission develops a map. So including, the use of adjusted population to make sure that we account for example, where people are in state penal institutions, but originally from the location. And then considering, the topography, geography, cohesiveness, contiguity. And I think an important point for tonight is that one of the statutory factors is respect for communities of interest. And I think that the public outreach portion of this is particularly important in helping the commission and the demographer identify what those communities of interest are. They may be communities of interest that we can look to, ethnic groups, things like that, but there may be other relevant communities of interest that are not immediately apparent to the commission or to the demographer. And having the help from the public to identify those, to say, drawing this line here is going to split up these groups of people who should be in the same for this reason, whether it's, it may be something totally unrelated to the sort of factors we've talked about now, but I think we want to identify those and keep them in mind in developing the map. And as Mr. Rafferty already noted, the one factor that cannot be considered at all is the residence of the existing incumbents of the Board of Trustees, or of potential candidates for the board. The California legislature bars us from considering those factors. Dr. Collingwood has already set forth his process for developing a map quite effectively, and so I think he sort of presented the preliminary options that are available, and so I think that the main purpose for this point from this forward is to gather any additional public input tonight that we can on these questions.
I'm looking forward to Friday the 12th. I think that having those preliminary maps and the availability of people to be able to see them, to understand them better, to kind of be able to play with the boundaries is a crucial piece in all of this, in our discovery of what will work best for this community and communities in the West Contra Costa Unified School District. So I just want to thank our lawyer, Casey Fitz, and our demographer, Dr. Lauren Collingwood. We are so blessed to have selected the very hardworking and the wonderful work they've done for us already. And we're looking forward to hearing more from them. And at this time, is there any more public comment on item D? Any more commissioner comments? If not, we'll move on to agenda item 7. And that is commissioner reports, updates, and future agenda items. And this time, I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand if we have any commissioner reports, updates, or future agenda items. I think the one thing I think we touched on tonight that I just would like to touch on again is I did post some of this on my Facebook page. If we can get that out on our Facebook page, it gets out to community members more and more, and emails, as we heard this evening from the mayor of Pinole. that was a great job. And Craig did email us and say, you know, should I reach out? So let's continue our outreach to our city councils, our PTAs, our affinity groups, and continue our good work this evening. Is there anybody with a report update or future agenda item?
I'll just make a couple final comments. I just want to echo my gratitude to Dr. Collingwood and Mr. Pitts for their work in organizing tonight's meeting, putting together this data and this explanation for the community about our work. Very valuable, and also staff from West Contra Costa Unified
Yes.
for coordinating a
Yeah.
hybrid meeting, which the fact it went off without a hitch technologically is quite impressive. I don't think these hybrid meetings are very easy from what I've seen to put together. So thank you to everyone. And I'm happy to reach out to the El Cerrito City Council, let them know about next week's meeting and invite them, if that's the pleasure of the commission. I think, and I assume we'll have each meeting will follow the same format, that Dr. Collingwood will provide the PowerPoint with any updates, and Mr. Pitts will provide the background.
I think that that was my thinking, was that we could conduct it similarly and also have, you know, ideally the commissioner who sort of from that trustee area, as Commissioner Butler did tonight, sort of provide some presentation, you know, sort of welcome people on behalf of the commission. And I think one question that sort of relates to this, but also to the next question, is whether we want the next week's meeting and the meeting 2 weeks after that to be commission meetings, where we would post an agenda and have a quorum of the commission in attendance, or to have them, you know, the commissioner for that trustee area and maybe 1 or 2 other commissioners, but something somewhat less than a quorum there, to have the purpose of the meeting be solely to sort of present the commission's work and gather public outreach and information that then other commissioners could review, but wouldn't constitute a meeting for Brown Act purposes, which it's a question of the commission, how the commission wants to handle that issue.
And what is the pleasure of the commission? We'll start again.
I would offer that, you know, these wouldn't be regular meetings, because I think the challenge we have is if one commissioner doesn't attend, then we don't have a quorum. And so I think it's important to keep the momentum of these meetings. And so certainly the next meeting, which would be an off meeting,
Right.
should be just a regular presentation versus a official redistricting commission meeting. I'm nervous that if one person doesn't attend, then we wasted time.
Agreed, but we do need to, I do say that in case all of us do attend, that we should follow the Brown Act requirements, and that we do have an agenda in case we do have it, but we won't have a roll call for attendance, as we won't have any action items, but we will agendize that meeting in case more than 4 board members decide to.
I mean, well, obviously, you know, all meetings will be publicly announced, and we want as many people to know about them as possible.
Excellent. And anyone else with questions or comments or updates for future meetings? So we covered item 8 with that as well. So we are at item 9, and we are at adjournment. And I want to thank you all for attending this evening, especially our public for coming out. Thank you so much, Mayor.
You're welcome.
We will hopefully see some of you, if not most of you, at our meeting a week from tonight, November 16th at 6:30 p.m. at, is it El Cerrito?
El Cerrito
High School, in the library at 6:30 p.m. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Try to gavel.
Yes, it works.